gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy.
Remarkable.
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. And this week, we're talking about B2B marketing lessons from Sex and the City with our special guest, head of content at Dandy, Rocky. How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Ian?
Wonderful to have you on the show. You have a super cool background. We're going to get into that. And of course, Sex and the City. So why the heck did you pick Sex and the City today?
Gosh, Ian, that's such a Miranda question. We'll get into specifics, but top line, it was groundbreaking, held a mind share of audiences, and the witty lines I think could be social ads today. Here's one from Carrie. I'm going to read it real quick. Beauty is fleeting, but a rent-controlled apartment overlooking the park is forever. I mean, that's a Zillow ad. That's an apartments.com subway ad. They were doing this way before we all were.
It's truly incredibly written.
It's sort of like short form content, but in the 27-minute HBO show or Max. I'm not sure what we're supposed to call it anymore.
Well, they achieved the brilliant writing in this world where you think of like Aaron Sorkin or somebody like that, where nobody actually on earth talks like the characters, but yet what they're saying is so pithy and fun and funny, and the characters are so well-rounded that it's like better than that, right? It's like better than, it doesn't feel real. It feels like surreal, but in sort of the best way.
Aspirational diction, perhaps.
Aspirational diction. That's a great line in and of itself. But it helps that she's writing it, right? Also, that the main character is. So that's part of it.
I mean, how often is the main character in a story a writer?
Yeah, right.
Write what you know.
Zooming out, tell us about Dandy and your role as head of content.
Sure. So Dandy's a startup. So just like any startups, role shifts. And the title doesn't really explain the whole thing. So essentially, I'm the editor-in-chief of all the content, including SEO, editorial, educational, PR, social media, and also an internal, external brand voice custodian, which I think sort of will come into play as we talk through Sex and the City, among like 7 other hats that I wear. Dandy itself, it's so funny in B2B, right? We've got the pitch that we give to our customers, and then we have to tell our parents what we do. And it's a totally different elevator pitch. Ian, you're not my dad, but friends, it'd be like a friend's pitch. We'll go to Sushi Samba after this. Essentially, you remember going to the dentist and you need to get a crown made, and they fill up a mouthpiece full of putty and shove it in your face, and you have to bite down on that sucker for like 5 minutes. And then it pops out, and then like in 3 weeks, you get your crown back. Dentistry is now digital, which means that if you haven't been in a while, good. Congrats. Great job brushing. But we use intraoral scanners to scan the mouth and create a 3D rendering rather than these physical molds. And those files are sent immediately to the lab rather than mailed, like the mouthpiece mold that they do. And the products are shipped back quicker. What Dandy does is we combine the scanner, our proprietary workflow, and our all-digital dental lab to make crowns, bridges, partials, veneers, mouth guards, things of that nature. And we're we're rocking a $20 billion old school health business with this. And so, we're all encompassing the dentist in that way.
And boy, does the dental industry need it.
Yeah. I mean, there hasn't been that much innovation in the past 200 years. from wooden teeth to where we are is like 2 steps.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to kvetch about in this world is the quality of dental care. Maybe the number one piece of it being, how is it not healthcare? Like if you get an infection in your mouth and you get sick from that, it then just becomes healthcare, right? It's like, these lines were drawn many moons ago that truly make no sense at all anymore. And yet here we are.
Yeah, teeth and eyes don't count, but they do. But that's separate. But you're paying for anything anyway.
Yeah. But again, if you get infected, then now it affects the rest of your body and then it matters. So it's just cool. It's a cool company. I actually knew about it before we started chatting, and like I knew somebody who worked there. And so it's a really cool thing that y'all are building because it's important. People's teeth, and especially like it just affects your pocketbook so much. And these are huge expenses that people almost never plan for. And we need them to be digitized.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying the word cool. Not so many people say they're cool businesses in dentistry. Appreciate that accolade. And sort of, talk about our audience, our customer, they're dentists, which I know it makes sense from a B2B world or a B2D business dentist world. But, we're marketing and we're educating doctors on this brand new thing. And so, part of the joy of my content marketing is all of this is so new that everyone needs education. Everyone needs content. Everyone needs to know what's going on. And we're able to provide it. So it's, it feels like it is marketing, but also feels like a service, which is a really nice reason to go to work.
A little bit further zoom out. You've also worked at 2 of sort of the most iconic media brands of all time, definitely of the recent years. And so can you tell us a little bit about the elevator pitch of your background and how it brought you here?
I appreciate that. And I'm curious to see which of the 2 you're talking about. But I'm a traditional editorial content person and made the switch to marketing maybe 2.5 jobs ago. I started out at Playboy. I've heard of it. It was an incredible experience. Worked with Hugh Hefner week in, week out. And one of the things I sort of learned from him, of the many things, because he was a smart editor and great content creator, was he never wanted us to create content unless it was marketable. Like he wouldn't want you to just do a story unless the newspapers would pick it up or a blogger back then would want to write about it or it would go fire on social media. And sort of that foundation let me know that like, let's not create for the sense of creating, but let's like figure out why someone would really want to boost this. And I sort of take that approach when I attack content now, where it's like, what's the social media line? What's the thing that's going to make someone open this email? Like start from there and then build around it with subjects. From there, I went to Inked magazine, not INC, the business magazine, INKED, the tattoo magazine, where I was the editor-in-chief for a while. And that was great because it sort of got me more into niche content creation. Although there's more tattooed people in America than there are blondes, natural blondes. Did you know that? That's a crazy number.
That is.
Yeah. It is a niche. My mom wasn't reading the magazine. She probably was when doesn't matter. And I spent a good time there sort of learning how to position to certain subsects of the population and really sort of enlift them and give them the voice they needed. There were tattoo magazines for 100 years before I started. None of them were very good. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back, but, created sort of something that the community could be proud of and could say, like, we've got to share a voice in the newsstand and someone's taking this seriously. And someone was me and my whole team. So I've taken that as well to B2B marketing and how you can uplift an entire group of people by creating great content for them. But then I was at Time Out for a while. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Time Out. They're in certain cities, New York. I think you're in the Bay Area, right? There's Time Out in San Francisco. Essentially like where to go, what to eat, what to do this weekend magazine. And that was great because we worked with a lot of small businesses and sort of, making sure that people weren't going to just the Instagrammable spot. Because most of those places are terrible. But like really serving the businesses that deserved their patronage and money. And then from there, we opened a bunch of food halls. I'm not sure if you've heard Time Out Markets. There's one in New York, Montreal, Chicago, Boston, Miami, I believe. And I switched from a role from running the media department to doing that, but also marketing the food halls and trying to get those back in there. And that's when I made the big jump where it's like, oh, I know how to create content, so I can create content for this thing that we put together and curated and I really like. And I got my first taste of marketing and just sort of really loved the day-to-day of it and loved sort of connecting. In journalism, everything's fleeting. You start on a story, you connect to that story, and then you connect that to the audience and you find the next one. This was like, how do I sit here and tell the story, tell all of the stories here and explain all of the information to a hungry audience. And I was there. I was doing the marketing there for a year. And then I went to Ro. You might have heard of Roman swipes, pills, and now Ro's really big into the semaglutides. Did some health marketing there, and now I'm currently at Dandy. So stayed in the body space, just in the teeth.
I know. I was going to say, every part of the human body.
From tattoos to, well, we don't get the Playboy part.
Oh, man, that's great. You got to love how awkward we are, especially as Americans, about talking about anything that's not the least awkward thing.
Well, yeah, and what's more serious, honestly? Teeth? Like your physical health?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I mean, totally. It's like when you get the bill for, your crown being put in and you go, wow, I don't have that budgeted. Hope that HSA is going to fire in.
So I'm on dental Twitter because that's what you have to do.
Of course.
When you're in and I saw a meme this morning where it was like a broken tooth watching someone buy a $1,000 iPhone and crying. Just a little dental humor to share with everybody.
That's great. That's really good. Also, you have such a cool background and have written about so many different things that I had to ask the question, but it broke my interviewer's rule of never saying, tell me about your background. I never do that, but for you, the world, my friend. Let's get to Sex and the City.
Sure.
Meredith, what the heck is Sex and the City?
So Sex and the City actually started as a real newspaper column.
That is Meredith O'Neill, our amazing producer extraordinaire.
So this journalist, Candace Bushnell, was 35 at the time. This is back in 1994. She was writing for the New York Observer, and her editor-in-chief, this guy, Peter Kaplan, offered her own column, and she was like, yes, this is my break. And according to Harper's Bazaar, she said, I think it should be about me and my friends who are all single and crazy.
I explore these sorts of issues in my column, and I have terrific sources, my friends.
Which immediately I was like, this is perfect. Like you were mentioning earlier, Rocky, like she's writing from her lived experience and it's like a content engine for your work, really. So then she told the LA Times, when I was writing the column, the reality of a single woman in her 30s was a new idea.
Single and fabulous question mark?
So I was thinking like a lesson here was like, write something new, feature new or underserved voices and perspectives. Then when I thought a little bit more about it, I was like, that kind of implies like diversity and inclusivity. I'm like, it's maybe not the best example of that, but at the time, like this was a new idea. So Peter Kaplan, her editor-in-chief, was the one who ended up naming it Sex and the City. But Candace Bushnell told Entertainment Weekly, she was like, I never envisioned it for the screen. The column was never meant for a mass audience. It was just for the New York Observer readership, which is a very select group. So it's surprising that it sort of surprised her that it did so well as a TV show. And it's interesting, her first assignment, Peter Kaplan sent her to a strip club, which she was like, this doesn't really feel right. She said that's a one-off. It really had to be about dating and mating rituals and sexual practices.
Was it true? Were women in New York really giving up on love and throttling up on power?
So it's like she's creating repeatable content or a content series. And I know we love talking about like serialized content being really, really important. So she ended up turning the column into a book in 1996. And that's when a producer who had worked on Beverly Hills 90210 and Melrose Place, this guy Darren Star, bought the rights to it. He only paid like $50,000 for it. And he first brought it to Miramax. He said, I really wanted to do a comedy about sex from a female point of view. I wanted to do an R-rated comedy, which at first I was like, it's kind of weird that a guy's doing it. But I mean, he probably just saw that it like was something that was a new idea, wasn't already out there. So he's like, oh, there's probably a market for this. That's when it ended up being picked up by HBO. It debuted in 98. But I think the success of the show is, I mean, for many reasons, like people love it, but I think the show like really captured a time and place, that being New York City in the 90s.
This is the first time in the history of Manhattan that women have had as much money and power as men.
So Sarah Jessica Parker, who plays Carrie in the show, said, when Candace was writing those columns, the city was completely different as opposed to like right now. She said politically, socially, economically, but there was a wonderful recklessness. I don't mean that I would choose to live that way, but it was a climate that allowed these four women to exist.
Most men are threatened by successful women.
So I think it was just like a perfect snapshot of that time. And I love what co-writer and executive producer Michael Patrick King told the LA Times, which was, I think, one of the things that made the show vibrate for the audience, is it was so personal to their experience. He added that before Sex and the City came out, society was telling women, and in my case, gay men, that they didn't belong unless they were in a traditional couple. And so whenever a writer has a real message that needs to be spoken, that's a great thrust for storytelling. So my last lesson was like, have a message you can tell through stories instead of like hitting everyone over the head with like just a message. Like I think storytelling really is important here. So all that said, like, Rocky, what really resonated for you about Sex and the City?
I mean, let's unpack some things that you said for like, lived in experience. Number one, Meredith, I think you nailed it. And that's sort of what marketers are, right? They understand something and they're trying to explain it to someone who doesn't.
Right.
And so like, it's a translation and it's a storytelling of someone with experience. So I really like that point. You sort of touched on the underserved audience. And that's, I saw that at Inks, I saw that at Time Out, and now I'm seeing that at Dandy, where like there isn't the right mouthpiece content for this audience that no one's thought of, no one's thought of dentists. We are.
Yeah.
And I think, part of the Sex and the City was they were serving an underserved audience who then loved it and like became evangelists for the brand or for the show. And so it's like, one of my major things is like, you got to be a champion of your audience over everything else. Like as a marketer, you are translating the brand mission into pain points that you can tell your audience about that will help them. And like, you've got to feed back what you're hearing from that audience to the higher ups to explain like, no, here's where we should be spending our time because here's what potential customers and current customers are looking for. So I think, audience is huge. And one of the reasons why I certainly wanted to go with Sex and the City. And, I think there's so much in it. Again, top line, marketing's dating.
I've been dating since I was 15. I'm exhausted. Where is he?
Like you're courting the customer. You want to make sure that you find the right person.
If he seems too good to be true, he probably is.
Ultimately what a marketer does is they play matchmaker between company and customer. And, your ultimate goal is to look for a mutually beneficial relationship between the two. So I think that there's a lot there. At Danny, actually, I recently used the dating comparison to my advantage. A lot of startups, they've got different ideas on what's their persona, what's their tone of voice, what's the brand all about. And it's really hard to get everyone on the same page when you're using words that you use, are we a SaaS company? Are we a dental lab? Or are we... And so I got everyone in the room and I said, make a dating profile for Dandy. Like, what do the photos look like? Do they DM people? Are there emojis in the profile? What's their ultimate date? And immediately everyone sort of shed like all preconceived notions and got together and wrote Tinder profiles and Grindr profiles and whatnot. And it was really great to see everyone come together and be like, oh, yeah, you know what? We would use an emoji. Not a cool one, but we would. Or, yeah, we would. One of the more eye-opening things for me there was, I said, how would they get to the date? And I was thinking, Dandy's a tech company, so they, do rideshare, like Uber or Lyft. Overwhelmingly, they said bike because we're green. And it's like something that even I wasn't thinking about. So I think, if you are wrestling with a similar situation, get everyone in the room, show them what a Tinder profile looks like, and have them go nuts on your brand.
It's funny. So we do that, something similar. I like that approach as well. We do this when we're making a show. We said, if your show was a person at a party, what would they be like? Are they in the corner? Are they talking to someone? Are they the person who walks up to you and says like, hey, who are you? How do you know the people here? Are they, doing shots? Do they have their tie on their head? Like, what is that person like? And so it's something that we really like to, explore. By the way, what the number one answer that we get is all the time?
Please.
Ryan Reynolds.
Of course.
Like, we would be like Ryan Reynolds. I'm like, fortunately, there's only one Ryan Reynolds, and I guarantee you that your show is not going to be like him. So we can't do that.
And he's really good at content.
Oh, well, but that's like, therein lies the thing, right? It's like, this is like what we seek. This is a tangent, but what we seek to create in content is not something great. It is something different, right? Ryan Reynolds is unique. He is just right. Like, who else is even close to like him, right? Like, who would you say is like the closest thing to Ryan Reynolds? Like, there's nobody, right? And like, this is why everything he touches has been, extremely popular for the last decade, is because he is super unique. And that's why people say, hey, I want my show to be like him, is because he's super unique. And it's like, well, you need to create the thing that makes you unique at the party, and it's still helpful to sort of know that. But so you want to be charming, but also funny, but also not take yourself too seriously, but anyways.
I know, I love that. Yeah. Anyone brings up a name, you're not being creative enough. You should be your own. Also, I've been to parties in the Playboy Mansion and some other wild part. I've never seen someone with a tie on their head. Like, like growing up, you saw that in movies, like the drunk guy with the lampshade or the tie. It's like, I've never seen that in real life, and I would love
It's my friend. I have a friend who every single wedding, he is on the dance floor with the tie on his head. And it's like, it's so good at this point, because I think it started off as genuine and now it's a bit of a bit, but it's so funny. And you're just like, dude. And he's been that guy for I've known him for almost 30 years. He's the tie on the head guy. It's the funniest thing. And you're like, only you. He is one of one. He is absolutely one of one. Because you have to be like in on the joke a little bit, but also you have to be like obtuse enough that like you think that this is really funny. You know what I mean? And then so everyone's sort of like laughing at this person, but also like if you're getting the last, then like who gets the last laugh sort of thing.
Right. And you being the marketer is probably at the bar being like, don't worry, he does this all the time. It's nothing.
No, and you're like, classic.
Yeah.
Classic. And he's in the center of the dance floor and he's got the unbuttoned shirt and then of course, like whatever song comes on, YMCA, and he's just spinning his head with the tie. And you're like, we're in our late 30s. This is still happening.
I'm more a student of chaos theory.
It's happened at prom, and it's happening 20 years later.
It sounds like you guys have a Carrie Miranda relationship, Ian. That's what I'm saying.
We do. Well, it's funny that you say that. I think like one of the things that this show nailed is extremely differentiated characters that everyone can relate to, and they easily allow yourself to be one of those characters. Like if you contrast that to like Friends, where
are you the hot one or the goofy one? That's it. Those are the only differentiators.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like they're not, it's great actors doing it's actors doing their stuff. Whereas like Sex and the City, they feel incredibly lived in, right? Mm-hmm. They like make decisions that they would make, and it's great. And I think that the show just doesn't, it never takes off. If every single girl that was, 22 years old when they were, like I remember going to a Sex and the City party when I was I was probably 17. And I remember going, like all the girls over there were glued to the screen. And they were all talking about the people that they were dating in the same way that the characters were.
Did you ever think that maybe we're the white knights and we're the ones that have to save ourselves?
And it's like, what makes the show great is not the relationships with the men. It's them talking about their relationships with each other. That's when the show is at its absolute best.
Will you be quiet? People at the next table have a child.
Well, that's their choice.
It's like dealing with unpacking this stuff. And then you get the payoff of the scene with the actual guy of whatever happens, but it's them deciding what to do. And that's like what makes it so good.
Yeah. And so that, the lesson there for me, for marketers is to trust your colleagues, right? The show wasn't just about the girls dating or the characters doing risky things. It was them bringing it back to a group of people they felt safe around and saying, what do you think? What should I do?
If you want to get these guys, you have to keep your mouth shut and play by the rules.
And I feel the same way in content creation, where you got to go off and do parts of it on your own. That's not going to happen in a room or a Zoom, the really great stuff. But I think that you can come back to your team and say, what do you think of this thing that I came up with? And as soon as, if you've got a good team that you can trust in, there'll be a great barometer. You saw that time over time in Sex and the City with them being like, you got to leave that guy. You got to stop doing this, Gary. Or like, Rocky, please no more puns in the social copy. You've killed it. And yeah, no, it's certainly a relationship show where the relationships between the four main characters are more important than any other relationship on the show. And that's sort of, we talk about if marketing's dating, then that's your colleagues. And so we're all in this together.
I think also just making it R-rated, putting it on HBO. I mean, by the way, we got to just take a step back to appreciate HBO. Like, the millennial generation owes a debt of gratitude to HBO for putting stuff on TV and making our parents pay for it, but putting stuff on TV that taught us about life. And it's like, you did not learn this stuff watching, reruns of The Jeffersons. You did not learn this stuff watching Friends or Seinfeld. Like, those were funny in their own way, and people love that stuff. But having this stuff be R-rated was a huge difference. And I think that this show as a PG-13 show would have been far, far worse. Not every show needs to be that way, but this show specifically needed to be risque.
Yeah. Well, and also now
it's in the name also.
What's in the name? Great. That's great branding, right? You immediately you're either in or out. And I think they're hoping that a lot of people are out.
But also what show was having sex be the first word of your show is wild, right? In 1998. I mean,
wasn't there a sitcom like Caroline in the City at the same time? So
I think you're right.
Like Caroline in the City and sex. Like, what are you going to do? But you touched on, the R-ratedness, but it wasn't salacious. It was more language. And now smoking. Of course, now you see that on everything that was filmed pre-2005. And yeah, it was real talk. I think was the adult conversations, as they say.
Yeah. And you could have done the exact same show and just not shown anything. And it could be Samantha coming back and being like, I slept with that guy, and it still gets the goodness of the show, the in between, the characters, it still gets there. But again, to be able to push it a little bit further, to make the characters a little bit more real, to have them have realer conversations, to have them not, in the way that Friends, the same stuff is happening in Friends. Not to, that we the same stuff is happening in Friends. They just talk about it as if it's not, they're going to the same bars. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Literally.
Ian, I got a confession. I hate Friends. I think it's bad. I think it's bad.
It is bad. I don't care for it either. It is bad.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I talked about, another meme I saw when it's like, I want to win the lottery so I can buy the rights to Friends and strip the laugh tracks out so that everyone can see how awful the show actually is.
What a tempting thought.
I'm just like, yeah, I would.
But see, I think the thing about Friends, much with a lot of this stuff, it's all we had. And so I think that people just fell in love with those characters. But you go back, the jokes are bad. So bad. But anyways, I shouldn't be so negative.
Let's not even go there.
Shout out to all the people who made Friends. You made it a smash hit show, and we're making millions of dollars each episode. So I got nothing left for you. But it's nowhere close in terms of level of funniness as Seinfeld or something like that, right?
Yeah, different show. I'll say not for me.
Yeah, there we go. Not for me either. But if that's your guilty pleasure hang, we all have whatever ours is.
I had a buddy who liked 2.5 Men.
There you go.
Not anymore. I mean, he probably still likes it. I don't talk to him. Not because of that. We don't. I think that they were smart with it and on brand with it and didn't push it too far. It wasn't it wasn't for shock value. It fit within the story arc. They didn't force it. And now they have to bring everything back to marketing. But, knowing, sort of being comfortable enough and having self-awareness of your brand persona and TOV, I think is extremely helpful in knowing how far you can push things, especially, if your audience is as serious as mine or doctors.
Meredith, what do you think?
Just a couple thoughts on Rocky, you said it's like real talk in Sex and the City versus like Seinfeld, or you mentioned Friends too. Like in Seinfeld, they have I don't know if you remember the episode where they talk about being master of your domain. And then in Sex and the City, it's just, it's more forthcoming. It's like real talk. And I think that was one thing that you said, it's not meant to be like, oh my God, they said that, whatever, but it's just real, like how women sometimes talk to each other. And I think it's more common in that era for men to be seen talking like that, but to see women talking, so forthcoming about their sex life and things like that, I think was probably refreshing.
I think that there is that's coming from a dude, there's an obvious shortage over the past, let's just say history of humankind, where women's stories are not told, right? And so I think what you have is, specifically as it relates to dating, their stories were not told, women's stories were not told ever. And so this show, it is. And then you look at whether it's Chelsea Handler with My Horizontal Life, you look at Girls, you look at, Call Her Daddy, which is one of the most popular podcasts in the world. There is a huge appetite for anywhere from just regular dating type conversations to extremely salacious type conversations that just historically was very underserved or not served at all. And I think that you see with Sex and the City, this thing, which again is on HBO, it's not on cable television. That's the other piece of this is I don't know how many viewers the show probably had. It probably is nowhere near as many as we think it actually did. Whereas the impact that it had comparatively is so much more. Whereas if this was delivered this year on Netflix or something like that everyone had access to, it would be a huge show. Even you look at Girls, same sort of thing, and that was still on HBO. But it would have had a huge, huge, huge following. Whereas even then, it's HBO, so it's just muted in terms of the total reach.
I mean, HBO, they were just the gold standard of television for 20 years. Sopranos and Sex and the City, Game of Thrones, and 13 others that I'm forgetting. And also, I remember being thankful that certain shows were HBO shows and not cable network shows. It's they can push it. They can do this there. This is a play box. But it never felt cheap or low rent, where some of the other premium cable networks push things to more of a salacious place. HBO sort of, they honed their brand.
I think that, again, very different time from 1998 to now, whereas showing a couple naked people each episode was a huge draw for HBO, whereas not going crazy with it. And so the idea, again, that you're telling a story with a female protagonist and her friends that she is writing and narrating, that they get to tell, that she literally gets to tell the stories of herself and her friends and their relationship to, essentially, being naked on camera type conversations, that allows for a very, very different delivery of the message. And therefore, you can have those conversations be real and authentic in a way that historically they were not. You look back and you look at all those shows in HBO and you look back at all the stuff that was on cable programming, and it's there's a reason why none of those shows are rewatchable that were on cable. You know what I mean? I shouldn't say none of, that's a huge generalization, but we're not running back and rewatching those, but we would go rewatch The Wire. We would rewatch Sex and the City. We would rewatch The Sopranos, because, it just had that clear creative vision. And I think from a marketing perspective, that it's there's room for both, right? Friends had absolutely massive, viewership, but also there was a machine that was built to promote that, or, 2.5 Men, or these barely scratching the surface type of thing. But if you want depth of engagement, you need to have a level of sophistication, and you need to create the opportunities for those conversations to happen that are realistic, that mimic our own life. And like, it's just a fun to hang out with characters in a sitcom that you just like, that are funny and whatever. But, when you see someone in Sex and the City say, this relationship is destructive, like you should get out of it. When you actually are in a destructive relationship, you go, oh, she's telling that to me too.
Yeah. Charlotte would never say bazinga. One last thing, or one more thing that I think Sex and the City can sort of teach marketers is how great design is such an incredible tool. If Carrie wore Crocs, which are hip now, but weren't in 1998, like I wonder if she would have been the same draw if the show had done that well. I mean, fashion was such the fifth character, and maybe the city was the fifth, and then fashion was the sixth character in that show.
Sure.
And I think, I've been in conversations like, let's just do this scrappy, quick and dirty video. And it's like, or we could take our time and do it right and have the design look. And I just think, good design, good look and feel really enhances whatever message you're giving, especially if you're in, I know a lot of the folks you have on are in some more serious B2B situations where we're delivering crowns to people that'll be in their mouth for the rest of their life. We can make a nice video. We don't need to film something on a scratchy iPhone. And, I often think that, and I know this is unpopular because scrappy and quick and dirty is in vogue, but I want the customer to think, wow, this video is so quality that their product must be so quality. I want it to be like a calling card for the rest of our products and services, no matter where I'm at. That the quality of content sort of speaks to the care that the company has in everything they deliver.
So I completely agree with you. And I couldn't feel more strongly about perhaps anything else that we're saying than what you just said about design. And we live in, many years ago, I saw this, a talk in the real life. This person was speaking at a conference and I was there in person. And she was basically like, design rules our entire world. We just sort of don't realize it. It's like everything from the way that sidewalks work to, everything else. It's all design. And, it really struck with me. And you start to look at things, and whether it's visual design or architectural design or things like that, it's so much that is in our physical world that is design, or our visual world. And it's funny that you would say that for someone who worked at multiple publications, specifically magazines that were visual. And I also worked at a company that made magazines. My first job in sales was selling magazine ads. And the level of rigor and editorial rigor that you have to put into the design piece of a magazine, because that's all you're getting. There's no other experience. It's just flipping the pages, right? That's it. Like the feel of the magazine and, but things matter. Is it on the page that on the bottom, or is it on the page on the top? Where are the photos? Where are the ads? All these things that I think you understand. You probably have a very deep, understanding of design in a way that probably most people don't. And that stuff super matters. And when you say scrappy, I've seen so many podcasts that companies make, obviously, that are terrible. And it's because they do them quick and dirty. And this isn't like a, hey, make it with Caspian. It's not that at all. It's just the design looks terrible. And it's like, I would never click on that. And then they're like, well, this show doesn't have great design. And it's like, well, that show is host is a professional comedian that spent, 100,000 hours honing their craft to be really, really funny. They don't need perfect design. You do, And then you see someone like, we had a guest on here that was like, hey, we did this ad in 5 minutes, and that's been our best performing ad forever. And then you look at the ad, but the ad's really well designed.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, you made it in 5 minutes. Someone on your team knew what they were doing, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like, that's the difference, right? Is like, scrappy still has to meet a standard level that is in this world. And you're competing with everyone else on the planet that's now creating on these platforms, that the best designs are being clicked and algorithmically fed to you, which are the best ones. And if you don't believe in any of that, look at why Mr. Beast was successful. He mastered the design of his thumbnails and then used science to back it up. Like, it's just, anyways.
Can we talk about why he doesn't seem like a beastly dude? Like when I first heard, like Mr. Beast, I'm like, oh, this guy is going to be like a hulking badass. And it's like, oh, he seems real sweet and nice.
I know, he's like the sweetest guy.
I'm going to rescue 5,000 kittens. Like, that's not okay. It's not beast mode. It's great.
It's a great point. I have no idea how he got the name. But we'll bring him on the show. Our former producer has a show. Well, our former head of content has a show, and he interviewed him, got to sat down with him, and I don't know if he asked that question. I got to go listen to it. What about your content strategy, Rocky?
Content strategy is just essentially championing the audience. As a content marketer, you're the person in the room representing the customer to the higher ups, to the SMEs, to the salespeople. Often that's translating the mission to pain points of the audience. And because you're interacting with the potential customers, not only do you deliver the message to them, but you get their feedback and bring it back in-house. And so, I know this isn't like we're doing direct mail. It's more of like listening and paying attention and respecting the audience more than anything. And that's what I bring to sort of every project. Part of it's which medium the customer wants to be communicated through. So we'll make a piece of content and we won't just like post it on Twitter and Instagram and unpaid and SEO, but we'll figure out how we can take that one idea and position it correctly for each medium in which the customer likes to consume the content, be it direct mail, be it email or whatever. But so that's like, it's an extra step. And I know many people do it, but it just pays off dividends because most people are only going to interact with you in the one medium that they want to, even though they might follow you across all. And so it's one way to make something, do a little bit more work, and then make sure it hits the entire audience.
What's one of your favorite pieces of content or campaigns?
Oh man, I'm going to take you back to Ink Magazine. Part of my favorite thing to do creatively is a bake-off. Do you like Bake-Off, Scene and Meredith?
Are you kidding? It's the best.
And
every family potluck, every marketing campaign, who did it better?
I guess, yeah. As performance marketers, right? We're just into the competition. We just want to win. Wow. I just learned something about myself right there. Thank you both. Anyway, so Bake Off at Inked. This was the day before April Fool's Day. And Inked was much less serious than Dandy. So we could do April Fool's jokes. Not really couth to do it when you're, dealing with people's health. But anyway, got in the conference room. Everyone pitched ideas. At the end, there were two that we liked. One was mine. And it was essentially a story saying that Disney was banning people with visible tattoos. And before you're like, why does that matter? The Venn diagram of tattoos and Disney adults is like, it's real close to a circle. You'd be shocked the amount of heavily inked people who love Disney and go to Disney often. So yeah, I was going to do a story about that. And another person on my staff pitched, this is when Trump was running for president the first time. Why doesn't he get a fake Trump forehead tattoo and write a profile on himself? And we couldn't decide which of the two was better. In true Bake Off fashion, I was like, let's do both and we'll see who wins tomorrow. And back to my desk, I banged out, 550 words on Disney banning tattoos. The spokesperson was April Ngar, and I can't pronounce the name, but April Fools in Spanish. It was an acrostic. So each line spelled out April Fools. So there were ways to tell. We had a fake quote from Travis Barker saying he was not stoked. He was totally not stoked about this new development. So you might know. It took me 25 minutes. I left for the day. Charlie Cannell, that was the name of the person who pitched the Trump tattoo forehead story. He had someone Sharpie in very thick lettering, Trump across his forehead. We got a tattoo artist to hold a tattoo machine. They don't call them guns, just so you know. No such thing as tattoo gun, tattoo machine, everybody. And did a photo shoot. He went to Trump Tower with a American flag and took selfies of himself and videos of him waving it. Went back home, labored over a story about this man who was really into Donald Trump. And The next day, we published at midnight, so they'd be up in time. The next day, we both got to the office. Mine was already picked up by the Washington Post, BuzzFeed. I made Snopes. That was like a huge goal. Snopes, like the debunking site.
Yeah.
They weren't sure at the time. We got a bunch of Facebook messages from people saying, thank you so much for writing the story about Disney banning tattoos. I've since canceled my family's trip. We had to call them and be like, don't cancel. Sorry. Just a joke. And, around noon, I think we put a disclaimer up top. This is funny. This isn't real.
This is on April Fool's Day, correct?
On April Fool's Day. Yes. Yeah. Celebrate. So also you remember April, every year on April Fool's, you open up your phone and you go on whatever social media you like. And you're like, what's going on? And you're like, right, April Fool. Like, it takes you like 4 weird stories. And you're like, oh, yeah. This is what's going on. Charlie came back. The Sharpie did not wipe off his forehead, nor would he get scrubbed off. So he rolled to work with a hat real low on his brow. And we checked the Google Analytics in real time. And there was like nobody reading the story. I high-fived myself, called myself a legend, and just sort of strutted around the office for a while. And then like a day or two later, it caught fire. Charlie made Snopes. He made all these right-wing and left-wing Reddit pages. It went more viral than any story I've ever worked on, even though my working on it was just saying, yeah, go do it. A lot of people were calling him the weirdest names, which I know was a character, but I still think hurt him personally. And 4 days later, the Sharpie was still on his forehead.
Oh my gosh.
So he wore his shame. And now, Charlie, who's written for some really great publications, that's the story that follows him around. And every few months, that photo goes back on Reddit. And you can pull it up, Snopes, Trump, forehead tattoo, or forehead tattoo guy, and you'll find it in Google very quickly. And you can see the photo. There's clearly a Photoshop flag. He's wearing like a comic book T-shirt that isn't MAGA. You wouldn't say the same thing. The same person be wearing MAGA. And every 3 months, it gets posted to Reddit, and he has to live his nightmare over again. I graciously conceded that he did a better job that day. So we're both winners.
I love it. That is so fun. And it's so fun that both of you each had wins.
Both made Snopes. That's it. It's one of the 5 things you want as a writer, right?
Yeah.
I don't know the other 2. Probably a book deal.
Yeah, it would be up there. Yeah, getting something optioned. You know what's funny? I've always thought mine is I want to create something that people don't know if it's real or not. So I guess this is actually the exact same thing we're talking about. All right. You obviously have, I don't want to say changed careers because it's still sort of the same career, but just different audience, right? But what would your best piece of advice be to give to other heads of content?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for recognizing it's like similar but different, my career path. And much like Carrie, who went from columnist to book author, there's just talented creatives out there who can flex into marketing roles, especially in the B2B world. Like journalists, they will learn anything. We're like addicted to learning everything we can about a new subject and then writing about it, like trained. And there's so many great out of work journalists that I just don't think they don't even know, or they have been tapped to work in marketing. And so, as you're hiring, I would look for non-traditional creative marketing candidates with journalism, with media, with writing background, social media, editorial.
Yeah, my biggest problem with the people that I've met in my career that have a journalism background and then get into specifically B2B, but generally speaking, content marketing, is that if you don't have the passion or the fire or the interest, it's really hard to fake it, right? It's like being a salesperson who doesn't believe in the product you're selling. And you kind of have to believe, I think. I think that to me, enthusiasm is actually what sells the most in B2B. B2B specifically, buyers are extremely irrational. That's people don't realize that. They think that it's more rational. It's like, well, you got 17 decision makers and it's $100 million, goal that you have to go hit. So you need to buy this software that's going to help get you there, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it's actually different than, buying a car. Because buying a car, you're like, this is my family's money. Like, I cannot screw this up, you know? Whereas when you're buying something, business, it's like, they're all probably pretty good options, And if something fails, like, yeah, that could be the end of your career. Probably not, probably be fine. And so anyways, to land the plane on that, I think that journalists, you kind of have to be able to do that. And some are great at that and some aren't. And then the other thing that I see, and I'm curious to your thoughts on this, is a lot of times they will take an editorial framework rather than like an editorial approach. Or maybe they think more like editorial and less like editors or something. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, curious to your thoughts.
No, yeah, a lot of the writers, they know how to like write leads, they know how to write nut graphs, they know how to hook an audience.
Yeah.
It's a different muscle, but I've brought people from Rolling Stone, Vice, even Cosmo, Carrie, into Dandy, and like just seeing their POV over something so vastly different from the voices that dentists have ever heard from, and they're really responding to it. And some didn't work. There's certainly some journalists that I brought in, and they just, as you said, Ian, they didn't have the passion, the fire, or they just didn't connect it right. But the ones who did have really sort of, showed their ROI on their pieces. And it's created like an incredible brand affinity.
Well, I think that part of the reason why is because a lot of those people are writing about something that people do in their spare time, their hobby, their love, their passion. If you write for a guitar magazine or a blog or whatever, you love guitars, right? If you like a certain type of music, if you like, whatever. And sometimes, there's a million different sort of factors that play there. When you go to say, I'm going to write the thing that we do with actually the majority of our life, with the 40 hours or 50 or 60 or 70 hours a week that we do, and then they think that it's boring. This isn't just journalists, it's anyone. And then they think that it's boring. Well, it's like, it's not like being an accountant isn't boring to accountants. It's their life. Maybe it is boring to some, but it's actually something that's extremely important to them. And I actually hate the word bored in general. It's one of my words I loathe. But maybe the only word I truly loathe in terms of something that has an impact on my life. And I just think that like it's very disingenuous to be like, well, that's boring. It's like, well, it's actually boring just because you think it's boring, which means kind of you're being boring, right? Or you're like, to that person, do what you're supposed to do. Put your feet in their shoes and think about feeding their family and getting promoted and living a meaningful life, and then go tell me it's boring, right? And it's not. So anyways, I digress. But the best writers do that,
And writer is the right word, because I think in marketing, there's so many people who are just copywriters.
Right.
I think in journalism, there's so many people who are just storytellers. And I think that they both possess the skills and the creativity to be hybrids. And the people who can do that will pay off. Because I always feel like if you can deliver me the customer story and it's eloquent and you've hit the right beats, then you are more apt and efficient to give me the copywriting around that piece rather than assigning it out and briefing somebody. And you just save hours of freelance by finding those unicorns. And there's thousands of them. You just got to find them.
Yeah. And to me, if you find the great writer, you can immerse them in the world, and they're going to find things about the world that are very interesting and unique, right? Where it's like if you take a bad writer who lives in the world, they might not even know what they're sort of, seeing.
I mean, I made the guy with the Trump forehead tattoo learn about dentures.
Yeah, there you go. And like, to me, I'm sure that will get interesting things that have never been thought of before. Because you say, why is it that way?
He's brought a really interesting POV and really, really got into the science of it. And now probably knows more than I do. So I hope, if he's going after my job, I'm going to circulate that photo of him to HR immediately.
I think they already have it. Rocky, it has been wonderful chatting with you. For our listeners, go check out Dandy. If you're a dentist, or if you know a dentist, married to a dentist, parent is a dentist.
Tell your own dentist. Be like, are you using Dandy? And then be like, how do you know that?
Great point. When it's like during the checkout, are you a Dandy? There you go. Everyone's got a dentist. Just tell yours. Maybe that's a campaign. Tell your dentist.
Yeah. I like it. Yeah, radio ads of, damn, it's great, Ian. Gold.
You know what they did? In dental school, they're like, okay, just wait till the exact opportune time, then ask the question, how are your kids doing? It's like, yeah, anyways, go tell your dentist about Dandy. Rocky, any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
Yeah. I mean, check out our LinkedIn. We're hiring. We're growing. Join me. Let's have fun. Let's do cool stuff.
I like it. Thanks again for joining, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Ian and Meredith.
Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.